I decided, I've been teaching this again for a number of years. If you have any deep down questions on CBM, we get it, the expert's right there. He didn't see me point at him, but he's sitting right there. Right, Mr. Brown? No, but anyway.
Wasn't paying attention, sorry.
I said when I get into CBNs, if anybody's got a real deep down question about CBN, there's the expert right there. He's taught me a lot over the years. But I want to show you something you need to be aware of when you deal with this. First of all, BAR is adamant now about killing the inspection right at the point of inspection. How many times you heard people getting noticed 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 weeks down the road saying, do you remember that 88 Toyota red pickup you did?
No.
With a 22R engine? You say, holy crap, I did a dozen of those. Well, yeah, that one is 4 months later, whatever it is. And you got to go back and look at your paperwork. The point here being is they want to stop people from using clean piping, clean plugging circuit vehicles, and simulators. Simulators are out there.
I thought they fixed that.
Nothing is fixed. They're out there. There's people doing them. People selling smogs that way. How many of you remember? How many of you are raising a low on RPM in the middle of a test on an OIS?
Yeah.
That's what they're looking for. They're looking for simulator because the simulator can't track it as fast.
But why doesn't it do it on every car? Or they just do it on the...
They don't want it to be on every car. They want you to know that it's going to happen randomly. They look at data. There's so much stuff they're looking at that we can't even tell. I'll show you why. So I'm going to show you that coming up, Mark. Bear with me. So the idea here is they want to nail the fraudulent activity right at the point of inspection. Stations flagged, OBD2. I'm going to show you, you can take this to the bank today. This is from Garrett Torgerson, not directly to me, but it's published out there about what they're collecting. So you're aware, because a lot of techs just are not aware of what they're collecting. How do you think they're finding all these people? Okay, so we'll take a look at that. Data check failed. Does anyone remember getting smogs and having to say data check failed? Okay, well let's explain what that is because it's different now with modified software. Block the certificate at the point of inspection and send to the referee, period. Okay? So basically stop fraudulent inspections, clean plugging was a big deal, use somebody else's car. So this was the original one. I remember being asked this when I first returned to the update training when Shane Lindsay couldn't do it anymore. And one of my guys from Santa Cruz asked me, John Clinton down there asked me, he says, Rick, what does a data check fail? I said, I suspect it's something that's not adding up in the OBD2 data, but I wasn't sure. We had a referee in the class that time. And he explained it to me at that time clearly. That's exactly what it was. So we were right. So the data check fail will send them to the referee. The modified software won't. So the modified data check saying something doesn't add up in the OBD2 data. So what are they collecting? Take it to the bank. I took this out of a thing directly from Garrett Torgerson. This is everything that's going into their database. All PIDs, count it, and remember there also are some PIDs, transmission PIDs in there too. I have court cases where they've gone after people and it says 31/5. I found out that 31 was the PIDs in the engine controller, 5 was in the transmission controller. So that's how they look at it. Freeze frame data, they're saying is not collected. And again, I just redid what he put in his thing, did word for word. And notice, I want you to notice they don't call them modes. They're already going into the UDS mode and they're calling them services. All history and current DTCs, and that's another way they're tracking these vehicles. Does that vehicle actually have that DTC? Okay, they may use another vehicle. There you go. Mode 4 is clearing. They don't collect that. There's nothing to clear. Mode 5 is, it's dead on CAN cars. That's for your oxygen sensor test results. Never worked on air fuel sensors. And on oxygen sensor cars, at best. At best. So not collecting that. They are collecting all MIDs and TIDs. Not so much for the data. They're collecting them for us what that vehicle should have on them. Okay, the MIDs are standardized, guys. The MIDs are going to be, if you got an oxygen sensor, you got a MID for an oxygen sensor, plus all the tests that are underlying that, as we're going to talk about a little later. Mode 7, penny codes, absolutely. But they won't back you up if the customer files a complaint when they left your shop and, with a penny code, and the light came on when they left your shop, but you had nothing to do with it. I'm just wondering if that ever happened to anybody. If you call BAR up and say, hey, or they came and complained, I said, check your database. Did you do this? When I did the inspection on that car, did it have a penny code in it? Oh yeah. That'd save your butt, wouldn't it? When the customer's trying to take you and they come back telling you need to give their money back. That's in their database. Don't believe it happens. Who's the last one, who broke it?
Last one
That worked on it. Okay? Mode 8, that's your bidirectional, not bidirectional, that's your directional control command for your eval. Nothing there. Mode 9, absolutely all the information there. VIN, Cal ID, CVN, in-use performance tracking are all being collected there. Okay? A lot of data there. And there's going to be more when we get a new system. All permanent DTCs. So if anybody asks now what's being collected during the smog inspection, take that to the bank. Okay? I was really surprised Garrett publicly said that.
So
Go ahead.
they're gonna take it, and instead of having, like, say, a car has a problem, and instead of just filling it, they're gonna just kick it to the referee. Because I was asking this
Yep.
question of the technology.
Yeah, they're not going to fail it on the spot. Good point.
Yeah, they're not gonna fill it on the spot, because I was asking that question, and I said, look, cars are gonna be able to fill all this with no check engine light on maybe. And the car's gonna fill, so instead
Right.
of doing that, it's just a kick to the referee.
Yeah, and what do I say is, who's the first line of defense between the customer and bar?
Oh.
The technician, right?
Technician, yeah.
So the technician you're teaching has to be educated on this to be able to defend himself when it fails. Because whose fault is it that failed? Bar, the consumer? No, it's Mark's fault.
Yeah.
So the better educated you are, sorry, Mrs. Jones, something in the data that they collected from your car doesn't match up to their state database. I'm sorry, but that's why they're sending you the referee.
Yeah.
At least you understand and you know what they're collecting. You're not gonna go in and pull this out and verify that.
No.
Now, is this, I'm sorry,
Go ahead, Hans.
is this on both 97 and OIS or only on OIS?
Only on OIS, okay. Yeah, that's as I understand it. Good question.
They're gonna turn that on eventually, well, they're gonna do away with it.
Yeah, bar 97.
It's gonna go
I actually heard, yes, Scott?
Are you gonna go back to that first screen and give us a conclusion on what was found? On the one that got rejected? Go back.
Oh, no, that one was just one I got. No, I don't know what that was.
You don't know that?
That was the very first data check presented to me in a class. And we don't know exactly what was in the data that didn't match up.
I'm seeing F-150 SVT, so that's a special vehicle.
Yeah.
It's likely that the manufacturer they didn't have their data aligned
Could be.
properly with BAR.
And remember, data check fails before modified software.
Yeah.
So anything in that category could have,
So
you know,
whatever the ID or.
yeah. Now they've got such a huge database from what Garrett says that they can separate, kick out the modified software issues and just deal with the data. And you know, remember star is, say make, model, year, da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, that's all they're doing in their database. They're data mining it, looking for the anomalies
Yeah.
for that year, engine, transmission. But as we're gonna see, even the CVNs, they run into problems. Okay, no, good questions. But yeah, Scott, this is the very first one that was ever presented to me. And so I did my homework and found out what was involved in that. But nobody knew, and it wasn't published anywhere. So if you get a data check fail, something in the OBD2 data does not match up to their database, and they need the referee to determine that your vehicle's okay or not. It's out of your hands, out of your students' hands.
What are the odds that the odometer was that? 12, 12, 12.
Could have been. It's hard to say. Hey, it could have been maybe the last inspection was only 2 years ago, and maybe that number was the same or low, higher, lower.
You can enter non-drill number.
Yeah,
You can, if it's in op or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I loved it. Hey, they saved my butt. A couple of you around, I think I've shared with you in the past where I had a catalytic converter stolen in my car, and it was a Honda Zuleb, 2007, and I got the insurance money, I bought a MagnaFlow and everything, and the light was on, it was off, it was on, it was off. And I had already done some homework. There was a bulletin, but the bulletin was 2012. What the hell's that got to do with a stolen catalytic converter in 2021? So I had some insurance money, plenty of it, and replaced all exhaust. I had extra, so I went out and got the Walker cap. Here I bought the MagnaFlow that said it was Zuleb approved. It is still failing, but it's not failing frequently, but it's enough to give me a problem. So I put the Walker on that was approved. It failed almost every time. So this is not a car problem, this is a software problem. So Garrett up there was kind enough to search their database, or Paul actually did it, and come back and say, hey Rick, every Zuleb that had that cat on it had that latest calibration that they passed. So I have this one at home, spent my $45, reprogrammed the driveway, did my in-use performance tracking on it, ran this thing 15 times between both casts, and saw it was passing the way it should be. It was the calibration. Yeah, it was a calibration. Does anyone remember the active station 6 months ago, you got a bulletin bar saying if a vehicle fails, failing for a cat code, you better check the engine calibration? That was my 3-page article put into 2 lines with them. See, they wouldn't take a chance on telling you, oh, if you get a zoo lab, do this and this might help you. No, just check your calibrations if the cat's not passing. It's a whole story. If you want an article on, I give it to you.
But they've had that a lot with calibration.
I said that to you, I believe.
Not on calibration, though. Calibration is the answer to a lot of the fields.
I know, but think of it this way. Logically, this came out in 2012.
Yeah.
That wasn't an issue with cats back then.
Oh, yeah.
But that's what wound up fixing the vehicle. And I needed their database to do it. Their database has got to be unbelievable. Okay, so you guys now know what you can say when they're collecting data. Here's the other thing they're collecting. I've seen this in court cases. I have probably 3 court cases that have been given me by people. Data protocol is one of them. Guys think they're smart. They forget that the protocol is being looked at too. Pin counts, and also, I didn't know this until he published this. They're also collecting the voltage at pin 16. I didn't know that. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I don't think simulators run at 16, at that volt or whatever it might be, or steady voltage. I don't know. All I know is these are 3 other things, and I've seen 2 other things I've seen in the court case. Never seen the pin voltage in the court cases, but I've seen the pin counts and I've seen the protocols. And the last thing on the bins is the older ones. A lot of them didn't report the bins. Bins weren't required to be reported until 2005. So if you get cute and use an older one that reports a bin and it's not supposed to report a bin, that's a red flag.
You know, most 12-volt power supplies that are plugged into the wall are at 12.6 volts.
Yeah.
That may be why they're watching.
Exactly.
You know,
But anyway, I'd be honest with you, I never thought of that until I saw that in this article,
Yeah.
this presentation he did. So I'm letting you guys know when you're teaching this stuff, so you're more educated on this stuff. This should be part of what we're teaching. I've said something to Bar for years. Tell us where the issues are so we can help the students with those. Oh, no, you guys will teach the problem. No, we won't. Let us know where the problems are so we can add that to our class. And look, to do this, to do that, to avoid this. No, with this, what do we say? And I'll say this on camera right now. Punitive in nature, you're guilty until proven innocent. That's never going to change. You hear that? Okay, modified software. Came out July of 21. We're coming up on 2 years on that. And not a huge amount, but I actually have some data they collected from the early vehicles that supports on this. And even teach something that I didn't know. Maybe Scott knew this, about calibrators having, multiple calibrators having different, the same ID. Yeah, see, I didn't know that. I was going by the regulations. I'll show you that. Something in this does not match up. Cal ID, the CBN, which is an algorithm at every startup. I was doing this. Many of you go back to bar 84 days. Some of you don't. You're too young. The machine, when it failed, came up with a checksum error. Locked you out until you got it. Well, that's kind of what we're doing here. The idea was to verify the integrity of the software. Okay? The integrity of the software is what was being verified. I made a little video from the class. It's on my YouTube. Just put Rick Escalante and just go look at it. It says CBN. And I use GM as an example of how we find it. But I say something in there that I didn't know until I saw this data. That there were multiple calibrations, the same thing, or it could be the other way around. So I'll show you that. And when I'm showing you from bar, this is the link to the video I was telling you about. It's supposed to be unique. I just say, this is the other data they use on modified. They do use this in modified software also, because if they use just the CBN and the Cal ID because of the variations, they need another level of detection. So there we are back to the same thing. Okay? They're never going to put this in print. And again, I mentioned some other things I kind of mentioned earlier, what they're looking at this way. You can tell people so they're aware of, especially when you're heading off the person who wants to do a illegal smog. You're making them aware that this is being done. Okay? You can say this. This is fact. Garrett put it out there, I guarantee it's fact. Because Garrett doesn't put much out there. Okay? So here's the first ones I got, which you might run into. This is pretty what we expected. The diesels would have more modifications than the gasoline vehicles. I'm just giving you their data right now that they released. I've talked to my Subaru guys, and this is very true.
Big surprise there.
Oh yeah. But my guy in New York, he says, we reprogram anyway, without a problem. My guy that I talked to in last weekend's class in Hayward says, nope, if it's tampered, they buy it. But the point you're being is, you can get an idea what the tendencies were coming in the door, what vehicles might have, most likely have the reprogramming. This is from their database, and I'm sure there's a lot more than he released in this. You can see how the percentages fall off, just going to these other vehicles.
What's funny is that the Ford too, the Mercedes,
60?
the Smart, why is that there?
Oh, the smart car.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, someone was that.
Well,
someone
I
asked
mean,
that.
hot rod, it just.
Someone asked that in the class
There was
last
an
weekend.
issue about the smart car where everyone hated it because of the simulated they hated it because it had one of the first, transmissions,
CVT.
CVTs, right? And the people hated them. And so then they had a software update for Mercedes that changed it so it shifted. And it just basically changed the
It's funny you mention
acceleration.
that, because this got caught in last weekend's class too, so someone made the same comment about a smart car being in there. So, anyway, this is just to give you an idea what we're going with, and you're wondering again how modified software comes from. Less likely here,
Yeah,
okay?
go figure.
And here's what they come up with. This is why they need the other layers of data to check. It says incorrect implementation of requirements. Cal ID is not unique to a given controller. In that little video I have, if you go look at every GM that I looked at, they're there. But I can't go to database to see if everyone's they've cross-referenced it. And that's what they're saying here. So I can't say that to you anymore. Scott already knew that. He deals with a lot of this stuff. He's tuning vehicles and doing other things, and he's got deeper workings than that. I mean, in good ways he's doing it. But the point here being is, this is what they're telling us, is if you look at the Cal ID and look at the CVN, same Cal ID has different CVNs. And you go the other way around, the Cal IDs on the left, all different ones, and hex have the same Cal CVNs. So this is what they found from their database, so it's not just that anymore. So again, I stand corrected in the past, I've said this, now we have to correct it. Because of this data they've collected, they're using much deeper levels. And they're now connecting more with the OEMs than they ever have, but they're still using their database to make the determination. So that's why the emphasis on what I showed you earlier with that additional data. That that's gonna verify the car is what it is. Okay? So if they're scanning the right cars, they're not gonna have a problem. Here's the other thing I always tell techs. The previous one and this one, unless you did the tuning, you're not at fault. It's not your fault. But again, who gets the brunt of the customers pissed off when they don't get their certificate? The tech does. So at least by having an understanding of this, it will help them. Okay? And then they mentioned that there's also some problems with some EO numbers where they have been approved. So they're trying to fix that in their database, where there's actually aftermarket programs that have been approved. So they're trying to catch up with those. So they can't be as hard and fast on this as they originally thought they were gonna be.
So let's say you have a scenario where you have an EO number for a supercharger kit. Let's say that your smog fails because of the temporary software. Now you get sent to the rep.
No, here's you don't get. Let me go to the last one. I'll come back to this. You don't get set to referee. I should have said at the beginning, modified software is not a referee-directed vehicle. It's
Oh, so it's only the error one.
only the data check. Modified software, here's the thing. If the customer believes that it can go to, they didn't do anything, they can go to the referee. They have to request to go to the referee. It's not a referral to the referee. So if you fail a vehicle for modified software, and you're a programmer, you can take all means you can and put it back in its original condition, whatever it takes. Okay? But if the customer doesn't request that, it's a failed vehicle until they request to go to the referee. Maybe they just bought the car. That'd be an example. It's a good question.
I got 5 of those.
Just bought like that?
Software, they
Yeah.
just bought the car, and then you look at the history and you see it's failed and failed.
Yeah,
and
so
failed.
they're leaving, yeah, and that's the other thing. History is still out there for you to look up to see what's happened in previous smogs. Scott, did you have some? I thought I saw your hand up. Juan, does that explain that? So, yeah, this isn't a directed vehicle, but you need to be aware of that. And the customer does have an option if they're really fighting on it. Don't fight on it. They can file a complaint form with a bar and let them deal with it. Nothing you did. You smog the vehicle as received.
So now, how would the referee pass a vehicle that has had a modified software that has a EO number?
They'll have to go in their database, and they'll talk to CARB, and they'll talk to BAR, and they'll have to make a decision from there. Yeah. You got who down here? Is Eddie down here? Eddie's down, Eddie down here?
Yeah.
So you start picking Eddie's brain the best you can. They're the best resources. We have them right in the middle of our facility. We had some of the best, and that was the best resources we could have. That's why I always tell you this: if you have a smog, if you're teaching a smog class, if you have referees, you used to be blocking out your referee for 2 or 3 days. If it's a day program, block them out with the referees there. Send your students over there in groups to work with the referee. We did that all the time. I don't know if you still do it.
He's rarely there.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing is, we had one there every day, full schedule, and when we needed them, I just called Patrick, he blocked them out, and then worked with our students 3, 4, 5 days in a row, in the mornings while they were there, and then they do their appointments in the afternoon. Great resource.
While he was there, he used to certify my guys. When I did my small class, my bar level 2, I'd send him over and say,
Yeah.
you let me know when they're ready.
Yeah, it's great use of them, and they used to allow that, no problem. I don't know if they still do. You were doing it until before COVID? Yeah. So something to think about. But no, I'm glad you mentioned that. Data check failed, you didn't do anything, it goes to the referee. This one here says failed, and there's no requirement to go to the referee. It's how much do you want to spend, time-wise, to check the vehicle out. If you're a programmer, you do PCM, whatever, you can go further. You might have to refer them. Don't send them back to the dealer on a warranty. I've gotten calls from dealers wondering why the cars, asking me what this information was and why they were there. That's what we learned about all the CVNs that first being tracked on the data check failed. So I get former students calling me, hey Rick, I'm in dealership, what the hell is this CVN stuff? I didn't even know what CVN was. Okay? There was some software issue, and that's all they knew. Then I explained it to them, they
Well,
went in their
that's
database and
something
looked
new,
it up.
other manufacturers using, but GM been using that for years.
Yeah, and also in that little video I gave you, that GM, does anyone ever use the GM Cal ID link to look that stuff up?
Yeah, I do
Okay,
it all the time.
you can't do it anymore.
Oh, really?
Outside, you have to sign into you have to create a free Delco account to get in there to be able to use it. And I think you were the one that told me that on the plane that they were doing that to protect themselves because they didn't know who was using it. Am I right, Scott? Yeah. So I created one and I can get it again because I used it for years and years and years and I put it in workshops at Cal ID. It's a great teaching tool because they were the one that let you look it up so you could show your students. Then I couldn't find it. Dave Hobbs couldn't find it.
Or you usually like GM, scanner, like the take you is right there on their scanner.
Yeah, but to look it up, to
Yeah.
be able to access it and match it up,
Yeah.
which I'm going to show you a little case that we have later. So hang on to this, it's coming right after this. So, again, I'm presenting this to you guys as teachers, okay? You have to be the next level of information for your students. This is a great place to teach them what it is, so when they're standing, they don't have that egg on their face. They can talk intelligently to the consumer about what might have happened. But I'm sorry, ma'am, I just tested your car as I received it. Whoever had this car before, somebody may have tampered with the software.
We're having issues at BMW because a recall will come out or a pick and fail, whatever, that required us to program the vehicles. And the vehicles that have modified software and that had the hardware for that software, they wouldn't be able to make it out the door after the programming was done. So then the dealership was liable, or the customer thought that the dealership should be liable to get their vehicle returned. It's like,
Yeah.
so they had a bunch of issues with that.
I have a case study from a student who came in and took my last update class on the end-use performance tracking. And unfortunately, they came to class a little bit late because by the time he had gotten there, they had to replace the catalytic converters because the cap wouldn't run. In the end, when he learned all this, he went and got the end-use performance tracking numbers. It's pretty obvious somebody had tampered with the vehicle. In the end, BMW ate the 2 converters, the 2 DMEs, and the oxygen sensors. I think they told the bill up at about 16 grand. Okay, so there's still a lot to be learned on this stuff. And he couldn't put it back. He couldn't revert it back. So that's the other issue. You get it. Some vehicles you can remember the old replace and reprogramming days. Can't do that in a lot of cases now. Can't overwrite. So it's just.
Need a new module.
Yeah.
No, they're not available.
So I just wanted to bring this to your attention because I truly, truly believe the techs need to be aware of this. Because they are the first line of defense between BAR and the consumer. Many of you have seen my triangle over the years with the diode in it. If you haven't, I'll put it on the board later. It's all over. It was all over.